You're listening to I Love It When, and I'm your host, Mo. I'm a speaker, coach, and connector. You're in the right place if you're looking for some inspiration and you're ready to truly embrace who you are. My intention with this podcast is to help you see that you are so much more powerful than you realize. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of I Love It When. My name is Margaret Smith. I go by Mo, and I am your host. Trying something a little bit different today. I wanted to start out by giving an introduction of my guest today, Kate Shepard, before launching into the conversation, to tell you a little bit about Kate and why I'm having her on the podcast, and also just to speak more, because I believe that that's what I'm supposed to do. So here I go. I met Kate Shepard through Tracy Major. Trees Have Feelings. I had her on the podcast a couple episodes ago, and Kate reached out to me through Instagram and said, "Hey, I saw your interview with Tracy. I would love for you to be on my podcast." And so through speaking with Kate, I realized quite quickly how much our values are aligned and how much value she had to add to not only my listeners, but to the people that she's speaking to through her podcast as well. Kate is an artist, a speaker, a soon-to-be writer, and host of the Creative Genius podcast, one of the top 1.5% podcasts globally. She speaks to artists, actors, award-winning musicians, TV producers, comedians, creative psychologists, writers, and even an Oscar-nominated film director about creativity, the creative process, limiting beliefs that keep us stuck, and the magic that can happen when we relearn how to listen to our hearts. So check out her website, kateshepardcreative.com. And in this episode, Kate shares about something that her first grade teacher said to her that kept her small and quiet for a long time. And we go into what did it take for her to say, okay, enough, and unleash her creativity, her inner voice, her true self. We also start talking and dive into manifestation and meditation, which, if you know me personally, are two of my favorite topics. And I have a really strong desire in my business and in my life to help people realize and understand just how powerful they are. We are so much more powerful than we realize. And meditation is something that has helped me to get quiet enough to hear that power, to realize that whatever I might be doing throughout the day, to always check in and make sure that it's something that I want to be doing and that I'm not just doing it on autopilot. So we dig into meditation and what helped Kate get to this place where she was able to say enough. And then manifestation happens when you're doing meditation regularly. The manifestation process, or the flow process that Kate talks about that happens when you get quiet, is a really beautiful thing. And the synchronicities that start to happen, the things that just fall into place in your life when you allow them to fall into place, are really beautiful. So I hope you enjoy this episode with Kate, and just buckle up. It's an excellent one, and she has much to share. I'm really excited today to introduce you to a special guest who goes by Kate Shepard. I just recorded a podcast with Kate a couple weeks ago, actually, and she reached out to me because of a mutual connection in Tracy Major with Trees Have Feelings. And I'm so glad and happy that Kate reached out. And I can't recommend enough to you guys to go check her out on Instagram. We'll be talking all about her business today and her journey here. But I have to say, when Kate sent me a voice message on Instagram, I was like, I feel like it gave me a chance to get to know you. And so I'm really excited for everybody to get to know you today and just to introduce you to my listeners. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, why don't we start off by just sharing a little bit about your background and what you do, and then we'll dig in from there.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've been an artist since before I could talk. I came into this world with this huge current of creativity running through me. And, but I also was born into a really dysfunctional family with a lot of violence and drug addiction, like parents who just weren't really able to sort of foster that sort of stuff. And I left home really early. I've been on my own since I was 14. And so it took me a little bit longer to kind of get back to that because I was in survival mode for a lot of my life. But the creativity never left me. It has kind of been the one constant of my whole life. And I feel like it's actually been the thing that has guided me through all of the ups and downs. Like there've been lots of ups too. It's not just, it wasn't all just hard stuff, but I feel like it's my best friend, greatest love, constant companion. And so it is in all my life. So I have a jewelry business called Morning Moon, and I make nature inspired jewelry. And I've been doing that for about 20 years. So I live not far from you, but up on the Pacific Northwest. And so I'm surrounded by these gorgeous cedar trees and beautiful beaches. And I go along on little walks in the wild and pick up little cedar branches and cast them into earrings, or pick up little sea urchin shells and make them into little necklaces. And that's been kind of my bread and butter, my day job, I guess, if you could call it that, for the last 20 years. And then a couple of years ago, I started painting after many years of not painting because I didn't think I could, or didn't think I'd be any good at it, or I don't know what stopped me from painting for so long. And not long after that, I had this sort of epiphany experience where I had this voice in my head one day tell me that I needed to start a podcast. And I was like, what? Why would I'm an artist. Why would I do that? But I followed it. It's called Creative Genius. And I followed it and that voice. And it's led me down the path to my purpose. I feel like I understand now how all the different sort of disparate things in my life have come together to show me now it was all meant to be all along. This is where I am now. So I do all of those things still. Paint and jewelry and host a podcast. And I've got 2 small kids, and I live in one of the most beautiful places on earth in North Vancouver in British Columbia. And I'm a very lucky human being.
I love that. There's so many things I want to dig into about that. I think one of the things, I'm going to share your bio in the post about the podcast and everything, but I want to share or talk a little bit, I guess, to start out with about, in your bio, you mentioned that your first grade teacher told you that you had a terrible voice and that you were supposed to stay in the back and be quiet. And I so identified with that experience. I wasn't told the exact same thing, but a form of that. And so I just want to start with that piece and what was your experience with being small and quiet in the beginning?
Mrs. Holmes, she was my grade 1 teacher. And I'm sure, if she knew that, she's probably not even alive anymore, because I think she was probably 40 or 50, and that was 35 years ago. Who knows? But if she was alive and did know that the 2 of us were sitting here having a conversation about how traumatizing that experience was, she would probably be horrified, because I think it was just a bad moment in someone's whole life. I think, but I do think that those ways that we keep each other small is pervasive and does continue and is everywhere. And I see it, in my own life today, and I see it in my kids at school. And I think it comes from an honest intention to try to help. We believe we inherit all of these cultural beliefs about creativity and about, what's possible and what's good and what's, and I think those teachers and those people in those positions have inherited these beliefs that creativity isn't in everybody, that it can't be lucrative, that it's not trustworthy, that you can't follow it, that it's not solid, that it isn't going to lead you to a life where you can be safe.
Yeah.
In our North American culture, being safe is like somehow the most important thing.
Yes.
It is important to be safe, but like not this much.
Yes.
We're not
too extreme.
We don't take any risks at all. And so I think Mrs. Holmes was trying to maybe save me from being embarrassed, or really did believe that I didn't have a good voice. I don't know. Now I have a job where I use my voice primarily, and I get like a fairly constant stream of feedback from people saying, your voice.
Yes, you have a lovely voice.
It makes me feel. And so I don't know where that came from. I don't know if there was truth to it or if there wasn't, or maybe she liked my voice so much that she was triggered by it and it made her feel like her voice was less good. Who knows what it was really about for her. But really what it was a person having a bad day, making a bad decision. And we run into those people all the time in our lives, right? And our kids are going to run into them, and you can't prevent yourself or your children or the people that you love from running into people like that or those ideas. What you can do is start to question them and teach your kids and teach yourself and go back and unlearn kind of the ways that you just assume that all those things are true. They're handed to you and you just take them. And that experience, I didn't realize how all throughout my life, that experience, it reached into, I don't sing. I love singing. I won't sing in front of another person. I would love to do that. I don't play a musical instrument. I would really love to do that. And I think I don't dance. I feel like there's a lot of shame for me around music and movement and that, because of that. And So now in my mid 40s, I need to go back and heal that. And
Mhm.
it's possible. It's totally possible. And I've done a lot of work to do that already. But yeah, those experiences are really, really traumatizing.
How long do you feel like, I know you're starting some of your healing with that now, but how long did it have most of its impact for? Did that stick with you through your 30s? And
Oh yeah. I don't think I even remembered that story until I started the podcast 2 years ago, or
okay.
a year ago, actually, not even 2 years, a year ago. I think I certainly hadn't made the connection between not feeling at home in my body and with music and rhythm and movement and singing. And I certainly hadn't made that connection until I started to tell the story about that. I think it was in episode 1 of my own podcast to my guest, because we had been talking about that, teachers who, it's ironic that it's their teachers and they're supposed to be empowering you and inspiring you, and often not always. There are amazing teachers out there, and there are many amazing teachers out there. So I don't want to say that it's like everywhere, but it is very common. And yeah, I think it's kind of right up until now that that it's had an effect. I mean, I still feel the effects of it now. And now I'm oddly, one of the things that I think has helped me heal through it the most is doing these cold water plunges. I do these, like I go into the ocean on a day like today, and for anyone, it's -9 in Canadian. I don't know what that is in American. Sorry.
It's cold. It's what it is. It's cold.
My kids would say that's RFC, really, really cold. Yeah, so I would go into the ocean on a day like today and really breathe through all of the objections that come up in the body around I can't do this. And I mean, there's all kinds of science around how cold water plunging is really helpful for healing the vagus nerve and your nervous system. And I think doing that has really, I've seen that have such a far-reaching impact in all areas of my life, because it's really helped me undo what I think is possible, what I think I can and can't do, how I look at things. When it's really cold and you've got all your clothes off and you're wearing Crocs and a bathing suit and you're up to your neck in freezing cold water, and it catches your breath, like you can't breathe. And the first time I did that, the only thing that came out of me was, I can't do this. I can't do this. And I noticed that it was just this like track of I can't.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fascinating. And so I was like, well, is that true? Is it true that I can't? Is it true that I can't sing? Is it true that I can't heal this trauma that I went through when I was a little kid? Is it true that I can't I just asking myself, or, is it?
I love that.
True? Because the truth is, no, none of those things really are absolutely true. They may be a grain of truth in them. Like, it doesn't feel good to be in the freezing cold water, or maybe it's scary to use your voice for the first time in a new way, whatever that means for you. But so many of the assumptions we've made about what we're capable of are not true. Those assumptions are running our lives.
Completely. I love that. I love getting to the part where, like, that activity, that who most people would think, oh, that's not going to do anything for me, that is what caused you to start to question, is it true? Well, is it really true? Could I really not get into that cold water? That's amazing. Because I think sometimes people think, well, I've got to have this huge, massive shift. I've got to travel somewhere around the world in order to make this change happen. And you could be in your shower and you could turn it all the way to cold. I've done that too. And when you start to realize how strong you are and what your body can really withstand and what your mind can do, wow, then all of a sudden it becomes endless.
And what your autopilot, like what your default MO is. Like, my default MO was, I can't do this. January last year, I sort of had my New Year's resolutions. I was like, I'm just I'm like a year out of a really hard marriage and difficult divorce, and I'm free, and I want to be alive again. Like, I feel like I sort of had suppressed a lot of who I really was, and I lost myself in a big way over those years. And so last January, I was like, okay, this year is going to be the year that I do all the new things. I'm going to do cold plunges, and I'm going to try breathing, and I'm going to bike ride in ways that I haven't, and I'm going to run again, and I'm going to, I had this big list of things I wanted to do. And day one, and I even had a bunch of women from my neighborhood who were like, well, we'll go do cold water plunges with you. And some of them were already doing it. And we got there, and I got up to my ankles, and I turned around, got out of the water, and I said, I can't do it. And my neighbor, Suze, was like, well, but but this is why you came here. Like that's why we're here today. Like, what do you mean you can't do it? Like, I'm already in, like, I did it. Like, and it just made me look at the situation differently. You know, I was like, oh, here's this woman who's already in the water, and here I am saying I can't. What's the difference here? And it was just it was just my mindset. It was just, and it was my default. And then I said to myself, where else am I automatically saying I can't do this? This is too big. My dream is too big. Like, where else am I doing that? And I realized I was doing it almost everywhere.
Wow. Did everybody get in the water that night?
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And, that first day I got up to my neck for 15 seconds, and that felt like a huge accomplishment. And then 2 days, I went a couple times a week. I'd go 3 or 4 times a week. And then the next time it was 20 seconds and 30. And by the end of winter, I was up to 4.5 minutes.
Wow.
And I could really breathe through it. And honest to goodness, I have carried that with me into relationships, into like, it's given me so much confidence in situations that normally I would just avoid because I thought I didn't know how to deal with them, or I didn't, I felt like they were too scary or too big, or it's helped me be more compassionate with people because I've been able to dig deeper and find a bigger bravery to be honest, like really heartfully honest in situations that normally, again, I would have probably just been like, oh, well, let me just let that go away by itself. Hopefully, it's had a little trickle in every little corner of my life.
I love that. Going back to what you said about being brave and leaving a marriage where you'd lost yourself, what got you to that point where you were ready to do something different?
Well, I've been really blessed to all my life and it's creativity. I have a very close connection to intuition, and I believe creativity is intuition. I feel they're not separate. So, the intelligence that tells a seahorse when to be born and how to be born and how to swim, and the sea turtle and a tomato plant to open, is the same thing that's guiding your hand with a paintbrush or with the words out of your mouth when you're in a flow state and you're writing. And I believe that intelligence is our navigation system in the world. And so I've always had a very close connection to that intelligence, and it speaks to me. And there are times when it's, usually I always say it doesn't really have language because it isn't from the ego and it isn't of the mind. And so it doesn't speak with words. It doesn't speak English to you. But there are exceptions. There have been a few times in my life when I've heard it say things because it's maybe just trying to get my attention in more subtle ways and I'm ignoring it. But really, I think what was happening was that I was in my body. I just knew. I knew that it wasn't right. I knew that we were hurting each other. I knew that we were hurting our kids. I knew that it wasn't the highest and best use of our life force to be together. And I was ignoring that because I was so scared of leaving, because I'm an artist and I live in one of the most expensive cities in the world. And how am I going to support myself and my 2 kids and blah, 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 all the fear stuff, right?
Yeah.
But the pain because what happens when you don't do the thing that creativity is trying to do through you, it's very painful for you, for your body, for creativity, because it's trying to move and you're blocking it and it can't get out and it can't. And also for the rest of the world, because there are other people who need to connect with the version of you that is listening to creativity. And so it's just everything starts to glitch when you don't listen to that. So I was in full on glitch mode. I had been ignoring this until I was knowing for a really long time. And I gained a bunch of weight and I got a tumor. I developed a tumor. This is so crazy. I don't know how much I developed a tumor in my throat, which to me is like, I'm not using my voice. Like,
your throat chakra. Yeah. Yeah.
Totally. It's totally cured. It was a very rare, lucky situation where I got to be completely cured from this it was the biggest size of one of those giant grapes. It was right in my throat. And it was wreaking havoc on my entire nervous system and hormones. It was making me very sick. But all those things are the things that start to happen when we ignore our inner wisdom, because the body starts to go, okay, well, how can I hold this then for you? And it starts to get all weird. And it's like a garden hose. If you have a garden hose that's full of water and it's gushing out and you put a big kink in it, it's going to start to come out weird little holes here, and it's going to back up at the base. And that's the same thing when you don't listen to creativity or to intuition or to your inner wisdom. I mean, those are all interchangeable words for the same thing, but that's what happened to me. And eventually the pain of not listening outweighed the fear of being in the unknown, of making the decision to, I burnt my life down kind of dramatically, right? Like
Yeah.
Yeah. But on this side of it, like I've never been happier. I've never been healthier. I've never felt more connected to all of the rest of humanity and individual people. Like I feel in love with life and in love with people and in love with creativity and in love with abundance and gratitude. And like, I lost touch with those, and they're not conceptual things. Like I really feel these things in my body every day now. And I feel like that's the reward for listening to your gut. You get to live in a river of that. You get to be bathed in that every day. And I'm not saying I don't have bad days. Like I don't want anybody listening to this going, well, oh, great. But if I left my marriage, I'm sure it wouldn't be all, ponies and rainbows.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah. No, it doesn't mean that it's not difficult still, or there still aren't moments where you lose faith or you get angry or frustrated or impatient. But I have to agree with you. As I was thinking about this podcast today and thinking about your story and reflecting on my own story, I was thinking, it was like this, I had this pent up, much like what you just described, like the hose, all stuck energy. And so now that it's all flowing overall, I am like 90% happier than I was in that other situation. There's still kinks and things that happen and water that gets sprayed places. But overall though, much less frustration, much less resentment, anger, sadness. Didn't realize how often I was feeling those feelings. It was most of my day, week, month, life. Yeah.
This is one thing that I wish that people, therapists and stuff, would say to us. You're never going to be cured of your, can I swear? You're never going to be cured of your shit.
Yes.
You're never going to be cured of your shit. It's always good. That trauma that I experienced in grade 1 is always going to live in my body in one way or another. But what I can do is have a different way of relating to it. So now that fear, where it used to be in the driver's seat of my life, now is a passenger in the back seat, and I strap it in and I say, okay, we're going for a ride now, and we're going to do something that I know is probably a little bit scary for you because of who you are and what your experiences is. But I've got this, and I'm here, and I'm going to it's a really different thing than letting all those things run the show. So all of those things still always live in you for your whole life, all of your stuff, and they should, because they're your gifts. They temper you and they make you who you are. But what happens when you change who's driving is you then start to attract completely different experiences, completely different people, completely different quality of love and joy and miracle and magic in your life. And it's like when you decide to let that kink open, you don't even have to try to conjure those things anymore. They're just they're your birthright. They're just there. They're ready to all the time. They're all just flowing, and all you need to do is let them move through you.
Yeah. I love that. That leads kind of into what I wanted to talk about next, which on your podcast, we started to dig a little bit into meditation and manifestation. And you asked me to define manifestation. And I was wondering if you could do the same.
Yeah, it's funny because this has been like one of my lifelong questions. I've always been like, how does my little ego mind is like, wants to know, it wants to understand, like the need to understand is always about control, right? Like, and so my mind is always like, how does it work? Because it wants to control the process of manifestation. Yes. My understanding of it, which is a felt sense that comes from my heart, is that there's a divine intelligence in us, and I actually don't know if it knows where it's going or not, but it knows something. And it's like there's a calm confidence in it. There's a sense of direction. It seems to have some kind of plan. I don't know. And it speaks to us through desires. So it will plant these little seeds of desire in our hearts, that either could be like you're obsessed with watercolor paints, or you can't stop knitting, or you want to get up in the morning and you just can't stop writing, or you keep going to the beach to collect the same rock, or you keep binding the same fabric from the fabric store and you can't understand why. It plants these desires in us as kind of ways of getting us to make, it's like giving us directions, like you love this, go and get this thing. And so when we can align with those desires, manifesting becomes very easy because you're aligning with the intelligence that's already making those things happen. And there's another kind of desire that comes a little bit more from the mind. And that, to me, those desires are a lot more like, well, I want to be financially free and I want to be this. And like, they're kind of more material thing. And there's nothing wrong with those. I don't want to shame those at all. Like we all need money. We all need to, but when they're just abject, or when they're just like about the thing and they're not connected to one of those seeds, they're not impossible, but they're much harder to manifest because you don't have the full powerhouse of creativity behind you going, oh yeah, I'm going to line up to make that happen. Like creativity gives you a desire to start a podcast and then sees what you do with it and then sees you run with it and goes, okay, you're in. All right. So I'm going to give you this now. And I'm going to line up this experience. And I'm going to put that. Before you know it, you've manifested this great show with all these guests and all these listeners and people who want to, you're helping, you're doing the thing that creativity set out to do. So do you see what I mean? The difference between like manifesting from your divinity and manifesting from your ego. Yeah.
Yeah. I love how you described that about from the ego. It's much more tangible. People want to manifest a certain amount of money or an object like a car or a house or something.
And you can do it. And so, and it's nothing wrong with it, but there's a quality when I'm manifesting something that has been whispered to me by spirit or by creativity, it's like a sparkling, radiant, magical quality to it. The act of like, I sat on my bed the other day and I lit this candle that I saved just for when I'm manifesting this one thing. And it had been years since I lit it. And I sat down and I turned off all the lights and I lit this candle and I like let this desire come out of my heart. And I could feel things in the universe shifting to fall into place to make this, because I had now given a voice to this desire that I wanted. And it was like 2 weeks before the thing happened. And I, honest to goodness, was not and it's way bigger and way better and way more amazing than I could have imagined. But I aligned with something that wanted to happen on a really deep level. It wasn't like, I want this card, and those things are empty for me. Like I've built a big brand with a jewelry company and I've made millions of dollars and I've sold to superstars and I've bought the big house and the car. And like, I've had all of the things that you could want in this life. I've made millions and I've lost millions and I've made more again. And I know it sounds trite and you hear people say this, but it's honestly so empty. Those things are not the thing you want. And believe me, I can say that because they were the things that I really wanted. Like I really wanted. I came from, I told you, I've been on my own since I was 14 years old. And I had nothing, right? Like I didn't have parents to take care of me and I have nobody pays for school for me. I had to make every opportunity myself. And so by the time I was an adult, I was like, I just want to rest. I need some cash. I want some. And so, having that success was really important to me, or getting to that. I thought it was really important to me. But then when I did it, I was like, oh yeah, no, there's a yearning inside of me that is way bigger than this. And this will never meet it. And so it's empty. So you can still manifest those things, but and I don't like to say absolutes, but I'm pretty sure I could say 100% of the time you're going to be disappointed because it's not what you're really here for. Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of, there's a video of Jim Carrey talking about manifestation and saying much the same thing. Like he said, I had to go through that experience to see what it was like to have the car, to have the house, to have the money, and realize, oh, that's not the same feeling. And then I feel like too, when you manifest from the heart, the difference between that and the ego is that this serves a greater purpose and it serves more people outside of you. And that's where all this strength comes from behind. They're like, yes, spirit, universe, whatever you want to call it. There's something super powerful. It's like it 10X's whatever it is that you want to manifest because for the better of everyone. Yeah.
At least. Yeah. Because you're doing the thing. I mean, every single being, an organism alive on the planet. I mean, maybe not organism. I'm not a scientist, so don't correct me if I'm wrong, but you get the point. Like most creatures alive today on the planet exist to be in service to other. Apple, yeah, of course, it makes fruit so that it can seed and it can grow more apple trees for itself. But it's giving us fruit. and it's giving us shade, and it's, every single thing is here for the benefit of, and it's mutual. We live in a relational universe where the biggest yearning we have is to be in service to one another. And so until we find out what we're here to be in service to, we're going to have that empty feeling that we're going to try to fill with which is why we have all this stuff with, excessive consumerism and this race to the bottom we have with buying stuff and, disease and dysfunction and illness and mental illness, and relationships are broken. Our systems are, all of that comes from, we're not paying attention to the thing that we're here for. That's very painful. Again, we're back to that. Like when you don't do the thing that you came here to do, it's painful.
Yeah. Yeah. It just reminds me of, I work with an energy healer. Her name's Kristen Wise, and she's been on the podcast, and she's done so many energy healings. And when I've started to connect the dots between the physical body and the spiritual body and the energy body, you see people in real pain from emotional, energetic blockages.
I mean, one of the ways that we disconnect people from creativity or from this intelligence or from, the truth of the reality of how all this works, life, is we've given everybody a bunch of these really limiting beliefs about, what creativity is, what gut intelligence is, and in that realm of body work and energy, and we've made that sound really stupid. Like you're kind of an idiot if you're like, oh, you're all lovey-dovey, peace, love, new age, woo-woo. Like we've made it be something.
It's so true.
That is, you should be ashamed of. Like, and I'm very much of that world, and I still find myself,
oh yeah,
like I'm immersed in that magic. And I still, like, I pulled a card the other day before I was meeting somebody for the first time, and it was like this powerhouse of a card, and I was like admitting that this card came up, and then I was like, oh, I sound so dumb. And I was talking to somebody who didn't think it was dumb, and I'm not somebody who thought it was dumb, and I felt this like bullying energy in the room with me of like, you better admit, just give the disclaimer that you know how dumb that is. And I just thought that's so interesting, because we keep ourselves, we've built into the fabric of our culture these ways to keep ourselves separate from this intelligence and from that. And really, wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody knew how to unclear their energetic blockages so we could cure cancers? And not that you can only, that's not the only cause of these things, but like my tumor, I'm 100% sure was because I wasn't using my voice. And, I've known my ex-mother-in-law went deaf because her husband was just constantly like berating her and being mean to her. And it was just and she just went deaf, and she just would like stand around the kitchen and smile and cook. And she'd have her the TV, her big earphones on with her hearing aid full blast. And she'd be listening to TV and in her own, but that's the only way she could create peace for herself, was to literally lose her hearing. So she didn't have to listen to this man beat her up emotionally and how many people do you know that have stories like that? So how amazing would it be if we could actually heal that, and people could, at least some of the afflictions we're dealing with could be probably resolved, but maybe not all of them, but,
no, it reminds me of the book, You Can Heal Your Life or Heal Your Body by Louise Hay. Yeah. And so now when I totally understand what you're saying and feel much the same. And so I take baby steps, and when I'm coaching people, I'll say, hey, do you mind if I pull an oracle card for you? And they're like, I don't know what those are. Would you tell me? Sure, here you go. And they're like, wow, I need to get some of those. And start to integrate some of those things into their lives to the point where they get curious enough to ask questions. Yeah. So this all leads me into wanting to talk to you too about meditation, because I often talk to people about getting quiet as one of the first things to do when they start working with me at a retreat, at a workshop, one-on-one coaching, whatever it might be. And there's so much fear around getting quiet and being with their own energy and hearing their own thoughts and listening to that voice. And you had mentioned that you had fear at some point around meditation. And if you could talk a little bit about that and how you got to that place and where you're at with it now.
Yeah, again, I think that's a lot of inherited stuff. I know that at some point in my preteen years, maybe like when I was like 8, 9, 10, 11, I remember hearing my mom, there was like a sign up on a telephone pole in my neighborhood for transcendental meditation. And it's just a weird little flash of memory I have of my mom saying, oh my God, well, people who do that go somewhere and they never come back. And I was like, and there was also at the time, there was like Time Life Books, I think, had like this very scary VHS set of like people who left their bodies and would like look down over themselves. Do you remember those videos, like weird paranormal stories?
Yes.
I used to have the worst nightmares terrified that I was going to leave my body and not be able to get back in. I mean, that's
Yeah.
Girl Guide camp and summer camp and all the ghost stories you tell each other. Like that's where all that came from.
Oh, yeah.
But I think when I heard my mom say that, it shut something off for meditation for sure. Cause I got to my 20s and was like, no, 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 I'm not, no, no, I'll never try that. And I dated a guy who was like overly into meditation, like really wanted to become enlightened. Like he was like on a mission, and he had every CD set and all the shawls and went on all the retreats and knew all the teachers and was, really trying to get me to meditate with him. And I really liked him. He was cute. I wanted to date him. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll meditate with you. And so he like lit the little tea light, and I think I borrowed.
Wow. Do you think the universe put him there on purpose so that you would try?
For sure. Oh my God, for sure. So he lit the little tea light, and we meditated for like an hour or something. I don't know. We just like, I didn't know what I was doing. He didn't give me any instructions. We just like turned the lights off, had the candle, and sat there. And immediately as we sat down, I like, this is such a weird thing to try to describe, but I did leave my body. I became everything. I became everything in the universe. I just expanded to fill up the entire universe. I remember hearing a dog barking down the street and thinking, oh, that's me. That's part of me. Like the way that you'd think of your finger as part of you. And
yeah.
And I was like seeing the universe from outer space. Like it was just the most amazing, wonderful state experience ever.
Yeah.
And it went on for an hour, and I got out and I just felt like bliss. And he was like, so did you like it? And I'm like, yeah, meditation's awesome. I'm totally going to do that again. And he's like, okay, cool. Well, what happened? And I told him, and he was so mad at me. You could just see like he went white, and he was just like, what? No, you've read about that. And I'm like, no, isn't that just what happens when you meditate? Like I had no idea. Right. Which is a testament to having an open mind and what can happen when you don't expect anything going in. Because I tried to recreate that experience. Obviously, I tried to recreate that experience a bunch of times afterwards, and just never could the same way.
Yeah.
But it did open a portal for me to understand how powerful meditation could be. And so I have done Vipassana retreats and 5-day silent retreats, tons. And now, because I've got 2 small kids, my practice is like a Vedic meditation, 20 minutes a day. And I don't do it every day, but when I do, things start to kind of get weird. Like there's, I get like there's power in these practices.
Yeah.
There really is. Like, I feel like meditation really is the most powerful, simple daily habit to change. Like it will change your life more than any other thing you could ever do.
I agree.
And I'm not exaggerating. That really is. And you have to be careful because it really, it is powerful stuff. And like I sometimes back away from it because it's like there's too much flow, and I'm conditioned to, I don't know if I'm ready for that much flow. Like how much would I have to let go of in my life as Kate to really be in that flow? How much invitation is being given to me? But it's also very gentle. Like it's never going to take you somewhere that you're not ready to go either. It's very wise. It's very gentle, and it meets you where you're at. And yeah, I feel like if there's somebody listening to this going, what's one thing I can do going into the next year that can have a really big impact on transforming in my life? It's hands down meditation.
And do you have any tips for people on meditation? Is there a particular app that you listen to, or do you have a habit?
It depends on the mood I'm in. I use Insight Timer a lot. I've recorded a couple of meditations on Insight Timer myself to give away to people. And I think I have a couple for sale even. But those are really good for guided meditations. I feel like you could do a meditation walking down the street. It's really about intention. It's really about carving out a little bit of your time, of your day, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is going to be that you'll actually do, where you're just making a decision to stay conscious for a minute. Because we do pop out of our brains a ton. We go on autopilot to drive to the grocery store. We go on autopilot to make lunches or to whatever the things we're doing. You're not needed. This like big beam of consciousness isn't needed for that all the time.
Yeah.
And so it's efficient. It's an efficient system. It's got other things to do, I'm sure. So it like flicks off and on. But if you can turn it on and just realize that, you're the thing, what you really are is the thing that's peering out of your eyes. Like that's what you really are. And that thing has been with you unchanging since the time you opened them for the very first time when you were an infant. And
Mm-hmm.
if you feel that, like if you stop for a minute and you kind of become aware of that thing that's peering out of your eyes, and you realize, oh yeah, that is the same thing that was here when I was 10 years old and 25 years old and 2 years old. It really, I think meditation, it helps you come back into contact with resting as that, and becoming friends with that, and coming home to that, because that is your home.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't talk a lot about what meditation isn't. Meditation is not about emptying your mind. That's such a huge misconception. I wish we could just wipe off the board, because it stops almost
so many
everybody,
people.
because it's not a possibility. So you sit down and do it. You sit down and meditate, and maybe you could do it, through sheer will force of power, like, oh, I'm gonna not, oh, and then it's like, carrying a big thing of bricks. That's not your job when you're meditating. That's not the point.
And then people want to just give up if that doesn't happen.
Yeah. And it's never going to happen. I just want everybody who's listening to this, who's never tried meditating or who's trying it, and this is what their experience is, it's never going to happen. You're never going to stop your thoughts. Because that's what they do. It's like trying to stop the rain from falling from the sky. It's just doing what rain does. And thoughts are just doing what thoughts do. But the reason we meditate is so that we can stop believing that we are the thought, because that's what's wrong, is we believe we're the thought, and then we get, a thought comes and we're like, I'm going to go down that road with that thought, and all of a sudden you're all the way over there and you're not even you anymore. So it's just giving you an opportunity to separate yourself from the thought. You're not trying to stop the thought from happening. You're just, trying to let it not be the thing that's in charge.
Yeah. What's one of the craziest things that you've seen happen when you're in that flow and you're experiencing more synchronicities?
Oh gosh, I've had so many. I had when I was 15, I was very lucky that my very first boyfriend ever, Fred, was an absolutely wonderful young man, and we were together for a year when I was quite young, for 15 to 16, and we had a very dramatic breakup, and it was my fault. I won't go into details. But I really hurt him. I really hurt him, and I really loved him. Like he was really the first love of my life, and one of the greats. And I really hurt him, and couldn't make it better. And actually ended up leaving that school and ultimately leaving that city. And I moved to England for a little while, and kind of moved, not all because of that, but just life. And I wrote to him a few times, and he was like, I can't talk to you, even 5 years later and it was hard. And then I think about 10 or 12 years later, he finally sent me a letter saying, okay, I forgive you, it's fine. And then Facebook happened, and we became Facebook friends, but we weren't really like talking to each other at all. And a couple of years ago, I was going through one of my spates of really in the like 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes a night religiously of meditating. And I was like I'd wake up from a dream of somebody I hadn't thought of in a few weeks or a few years, and like I'd see them that day, and it just became this weird, like I felt like I was in the Truman Show. Like it was just this weird, everything, like nothing made sense anymore. So I was in this deep meditation one afternoon when I was by myself at my studio. It was probably about an hour and a half meditation, and he just came to me in this meditation, and there was this beautiful like friendship and forgiveness, and we were hugging each other, and we were crying, and it was like no time had gone by, and there was no space between us, and I was weak. Like I could feel his forgiveness was deep and real, not just like something he'd said. And then I got out of that meditation and kind of, had a glass of water and went back to my computer because it was time to do some work. I was at the studio and needed to get some orders out or something. And there was one little red dot on my Facebook Messenger. And while I was in that meditation, had sent me a note, the very first note that he'd, sent me ever, saying, I just wanted you to know that he works at like a performance place, and like there's a symphony playing, and they were playing our song this week, and this is like 25 years later, right? Like this is a very long time later to send a random message. And I just want I always think, whenever I hear that song, I think of you really fondly, and I'm so glad you've turned into the person you've turned into, and blah blah blah, like, which is a beautiful and I was like, what is happening? That's way too much of a coincidence. But things like that start to happen, and you start to, because I think you tap into, all that stuff about we're all one, and it's one love and one intelligence. That's not just like fodder for t-shirts and hats. Like it's true. We really are one.
Yeah.
And when we can really tap into these practices in an honest and curious way, we access that magic. And it's really, and it is a little scary because it's very unknown and it's not what we're taught, but the world is not what you think it is.
No. And this whole process of all of us recognizing our power is such a beautiful part of humanity. And I think the direction that we're moving in and what we're supposed to be helping each other do. Recognize our power. Yeah. Do you feel like you've had, well, okay, I can talk to you forever, but one of the last questions I have for you is, have you gotten messages about where your podcast is supposed to go? The Creative Genius podcast?
Yes, I have. And it's not necessarily like a specific destination. It's more like the scale of it and the like. I know that I'm here. And this is interesting, like how I bump into my own limiting beliefs, right? Like this is like culture trying to keep me small, but I know that I'm here to serve millions of people. Like I'm here to help.
Yes.
Like there's a sign, a little Post-it note on my wall that I look at every morning when I get up, and it's, I am here to serve and support the emergence of creativity in millions of people everywhere. Until we realize that our own wound with creativity and intelligence and gut instinct, until we realize that that's happening and turn back to ourselves and learn to fall in love with that and trust it, humanity will continue to glitch and society will continue to crumble. And I, like you, believe that there's this rising wave right now happening. We're in the middle of like a massive reorganization where we finally do reclaim that aspect of ourselves. So I don't have like a specific, I know that there's a book in me and much of it's already written. And I can feel the scale of it more than I can feel the specific destination of it. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Absolutely. I absolutely see you global and beyond. And that's, it's funny, that feeling like you described. I can't see exactly where my business is going as well, but what I have done and what I do intuitively is set it up to be global.
Yeah.
And then I tell people that, and I'm like, I'm going to be global. Do you want to jump on the train now or later? So and I think that's just so beautiful. And I think I don't think people realize a lot of this can happen and you don't have to be the one person pushing all of this forward. And so I think a lot of people stop themselves from doing what you're doing because they're just like, well, there's no way I could be global. Why would I? And just,
why me?
Yes. Yes.
How dare I? I remember talking to my mom about this, and she's one of the voices from my childhood that kept me really small. And I remember her saying to me, like, why does it have to be so big? Because I was saying like excellence was like this. I had this word that just kept coming up for me. I wanted my work to be excellent and not necessarily like winning awards, but like, I want the sound of the show to sound really amazing in people's ears. And I want the guests to be excellent. I wanted there to be this like reverential quality to this conversation. Yes. And she was like, why does everything have to be excellent? Why does everything have to be like, we keep it, and we keep each other small, and and I think that's, when you were saying just a minute ago about reclaiming our power, when there is a lot of knee-jerk reaction that we have in ourselves. And I speak probably on behalf of everybody, to keep ourselves small, to keep our lights dimmed. And even when I told you that I could feel the scale of it, that I'm here, and it's a gift. Like I'm here to serve. I'm not here to take anything from those people. I'm here to serve. When I think about all of those people, I can get myself into a place where I'm weeping tears of joy and like excitement that we're going to do this work together. Yeah. But it's still, there's a corner of me that's like, how dare you say that you're going to reach millions of people? Who do you think you are? Like, just like notice. And so I just like kind of nod at those thoughts, and I'm like, see you, and we're moving on.
Yes. Oh my God, I love it. Okay, so my last question for you, just for today, I have a feeling you're going to be back for another episode in the future.
Anytime.
Thank you. What's your current I love it when for the world?
I love it when you can be brave enough to be in uncertainty and let it take you where it's trying to take you.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing today and for sharing your journey and for using your voice. It's a beautiful voice, and you definitely won me over immediately. And I can't wait for people to hear more about you today and come check out your podcast and all of the amazing guests that you've had so far. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me. And I feel the very same way about you. I feel like there's maybe some collaboration in our future, not too far from now.
Heck yeah.